Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Reboot, Reflect, Revive interviews, where I invite guests who are experts, thought leaders, and change makers. They give us a perspective on how to deal with our future. They give us a better understanding of how we can progress forward and do better in our life in these times. So today I'm very, very happy to welcome Prashant Menon. He's a strategy and leadership consultant, executive leadership and team coach, faculty and speaker, founder director at Workplace Dynamics, co-founder at the Bento coach. So welcome, Prashant. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you. So Prashant, you've had quite a number of years, I think decades in the corporate field, especially in pharmaceuticals, and then you've played key roles in these areas. You're also now, you have so many coaching credentials. What happened? Why the transition? Any specific trigger?
Many triggers. I mean, one would be dishonest if I say just one trigger, but I guess over the last maybe 5 years of my corporate career, I was really spending time on, wanting to be getting into a full-time consulting assignment and also focus on leadership development. I mean, these were two key, very, very prized, I think, passionate areas for me, where I wanted to impact people and keep learning on the way, keep sharing on the way. As I got into firming up myself, trying to get into consulting and leadership development, in came along, coaching as a very pertinent area to really progress and be a lot more holistic. Maybe towards the last 4-5 years of my career, I also had a coach, and I guess that was an aha moment for me, because there were a lot of things, there were a lot of blind spots that I was not aware of. And I guess the coaching sessions brought about a lot of awareness around what I can do, what I can impact on. And that gave me a different level of perspective, a different level of understanding on what I need to do next. And there I started forming up my resolve in trying to do something on my own someday or the other. I guess COVID was blessing in disguise for me. I guess it gave me the impetus, gave me the confidence, the courage to step out and do something. And I first started my journey into full-time consulting and leadership development in the name of Workplace Dynamics. And I have a team of consultants who really assist me and support me in various client partnerships that we work for. And over my coaching tenure, because what happened was, we all coach, right? As leaders and as experienced professionals, you do a lot of coaching and mentoring on the job, and there might sometimes not be much of a structure around it. You normally tend to coach the way you have either been coached or mentored, and you think that's the right way to do it. But if I was getting into a full-time practice as an executive coach or as a team coach, I thought I must be credentialed. I must have a structure around it, and I must learn the science of it. And having worked in healthcare industry for the last more than 2.5 decades, I think the science of everything is very relevant for what I do. There's a lot of structure in the way I really approach myself, and hence the need to go into the credentials. And it helps. While we say, if you are a professional, an MBA tag helps you.
Yeah.
But if you're a coach, I guess ICF credential and the other executive coaching credentials really puts you at a different pedestal. So the trigger has been for the last 4 to 5 years. It just probably summed up courage towards the COVID time. And for less than 2 years now, I've been into this full time, and it's been hell of a journey. It's been fun.
Leadership nowadays is evolving. If I've read and researched so much about it, there is some sort of transition happening. And maybe it's happening since many years, but recently it's come to the forefront. So traditionally, a leader is looked upon as someone with all the answers. He's kind of a pillar of a person, always putting up a strong front, appears like he knows everything, never shows any kind of weak moments. So I was just wondering, because you've shared an article on compassionate leadership, and I was curious on how do you understand leaders now, especially since you do executive coaching, and what is your take on leadership?
Very, very exciting, the way you put the question, and a lot of these thoughts that we had about leaders, probably has been challenged. This entire thought of a leader knowing it all, I think, is passé. We never want to work with somebody who knows it all, right? What's now happening in the last 2 years precisely? We've suddenly been exposed to many things around, thanks to the digital, the digital onslaught and the digital awareness that each one of us are, exposed to. Various platforms have given us opportunities to connect with each other, to know what others are doing.
Correct.
And what I see in this entire journey is that leaders today have very typically moved or shifted from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all. They've actually progressed, and they need to progress to a constantly learn-it-all mindset, which is what we call the growth mindset. Number one. Number two, I guess a lot of the entity beliefs that one lives with. I mean, one is born with a lot of entity beliefs that firms up your fixed mindset that is there. But a lot of the developmental beliefs that keep happening, a lot of the shifts that keep happening, keeps you getting a lot more involved and keeps you getting a lot more curious.
Yes.
So if there is a leader who's not curious, then I guess a leader is never going to learn what's going to come up. If there's a leader who's not going to be compassionate, his job is to serve, and by serving he leads. And hence, if you look at the last few years, this concept of servant leadership also has emerged as one of the pet conversations around a lot of leadership summits. So the leader today is willing to learn. The leader today is willing to stay curious. The leader today is willing to reach out to people beyond hierarchy. The leader today is also expected to be vulnerable. So if I had weak spots, if I had blind spots, as a leader, probably 5 years back, 10 years back, I would stay very guarded. But today, if I expose the vulnerability, it increases my acceptance as a leader. Because what do you want? Today, you want leaders to be absolutely approachable to people. When you are in an organization, when you are leading either a profitable or a non-profitable organization, you want people to follow you. And they will only follow you if they relate to you. And if you want to be relatable, it makes a lot of sense for you to be highly vulnerable. So if I would not share my failures with people, then I would not give them the feeling that, okay, it's okay to fail. Because when you keep failing, you keep learning, and hence you reach a level that is today a lot more different than what I was earlier. So the entire paradigm of leadership, I guess, is seeing a wonderful curve of change, a sea of change. And I guess it's only going to start getting a lot more open, compassionate, authentic as we speak and as we keep witnessing around us.
So you've noticed the team dynamics have changed. You have been in coaching in teams, right? A lot of team coaching. And have you noticed how it's changed, whether the C-suite or the managerial position, the executive level of leaders, how they interact with their teams? You've noticed that change? Are they changing, willing to change?
Yes, if they are not willing to change, then I guess they're not going to be in touch with reality. That's going to be extremely critical. And I would just like to pick up an example where we were talking about one of the team interventions, and I was really working on a 3-year strategy with an organization on how they want to reach from X value to maybe 3X value in 3 years time. And as they wanted to look at the landscape of a 3-year growth journey, we looked at certain 3 broad pillars that is going to help us. The first pillar was supposed to be how the brands are going to shape up. What are the kind of brands that are going to drive the growth? The second was, what are the kind of people that we need to inculcate in the organization and also attract into the organization? And the third was on the processes, because the processes were building. So each of the people and the process piece was also going to start building the culture of the organization. So they wanted to create a culture in the next 3 years that we are going to be something like this. We want to be known as something like this. And the journey starts right now. So the team dynamics has changed a lot because the leadership on top believes that he needs to start walking the talk. So leaders who are alert, leaders who are compassionate, you would find them really stepping down from their pedestals and actually being with the team and actually learning with the team. And when you learn with the team, you begin to enjoy the fruits of contribution, the fruits of success, even the failures. I am failing and I see that my boss is just there next to me. It's not that he's sitting in a cubicle or in a glass door. I see him with me and I'm a lot more encouraged. I'm a lot more empathetic to the entire situation and I don't feel at loss. So leadership today.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So, leadership today is seeing this change in teams because we all realize that the power of teams is amazing, right? I mean, everywhere you are not known for what you are, you're known for the team that you lead or the team that you work for. So the team dynamics in a lot of our team coaching engagements that we do. So for this organization, we started with, identifying what competencies we need to create. We actually stuck down on a competency framework. We assessed people where they stand on that competencies, mapped the areas where there is a gap, and then went on to have a lot of interventions, first at a team level and then at an individual level.
Okay.
Normally, you find people starting the other way around, starts with the individual and then go to teams. But we wanted the team to start gearing up and then also pick up the individual. So that's the route that we followed for this organization. And we are now into year 2 of the whole exercise and we have another year to go, but it looks exciting. There is a shift that's happening. There is a positive momentum that is gaining traction. And I guess that's what we are constantly assessing ourselves to see that are we on course. So team dynamics will require the leadership to believe in that. Team dynamics will require the leadership to step down from their pedestal and be amongst the team to really walk the path.
So that in that sense, it would be very motivating, I'm guessing, for the team to see that their boss is there with them, going through the process of learning. How would you say, if a leader steps down from his pedestal, to an extent, there has to be a fine line, a balance that the respect is maintained in an organization that so-and-so is a managing director or a superior, or is in that position where he's looked up to and respected. So there has to be some kind of fine line there, right? I mean, you can't just have a leader stepping down and then being part of the team. There has to be that respect factor also.
True. So what you do is, you got to really understand when do you need to step down into the rank and file of people. When do you want to jump into trenches? You jump into trenches, want to learn. You jump into trenches to be empathetic to people. You jump into trenches to be curious about how things are done or what are the challenges that are faced. When you jump into the trenches with these intentions in mind, you don't give the feeling to the line hierarchy of the managers that you have under you that you are trying to micromanage. The issue comes when you do the job of a manager and ask him the same administrative and operational let's say requirements, or is he falling in line with the requirements of the organization? That's not your job as a senior leader. The job of a senior leader is to jump into the trenches purely from a learning point of view, purely from understanding the people's issues point of view, purely from meeting customers, purely from understanding what is the challenges that they face between the employee and the customer in the front end. And when you have that intent and you display that intent loud and clear, you will actually not trespass the kind of hierarchies and the kind of system that you have created, which you got to respect. So it's a very, very valid question that you ask.
Yes. So that would be, you would term that as compassionate leadership, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, there has to be a genuine concern for employees. There has to be a genuine concern for, let's say, bolstering diversity in the team. And when I say diversity, I just don't, I look at diversity in a very different way. I don't just look at it as a gender diversity. I look at diversity of various skill sets, diversity of various of, let's say, various age groups, diversity of various genders. When you do that, you then truly build an organization that can be sustainable, that can be systemically growing in a long drawn shot.
So would you say that there's a different way of leadership in terms of Western corporates and Indian?
There would be. I guess, you know, though I haven't worked a lot in the Western world, but from what I read and what I really get exposed to, thanks to the social media, the kind of evolution of employees and managers there are of a different level.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of evolution of managers in the eastern part of this part of the world is of a different level.
Mm-hmm.
You got to understand that cultural differences and then start changing gears. And once you recognize and once you respect those cultural DNAs in either a country or a company or a region or an ethnicity, I guess you start to play much more winning shots than you would normally. It's not easy to juxtapose an Eastern in a Western or a Western in an Eastern. I mean, when you do that, companies and leaderships have generally not seen success in the first group.
Correct.
So there's that book that talks about the first 100 days, and I use it in a lot of my management development programs. That the first 100 days is very important for you to recognize the DNA of people, company, culture. And when you do that, you first need to adapt and adopt to what's happening. And when you adapt and adopt, you learn to begin and build trust. Because here is a leader who comes into the system and tries to understand us and then start making changes, what is relevant to the organization and the future. The buy-in is a lot more better. Unlike leaders who probably day one and the announcement is very different and the actions are very different, it might not be so easy. It might not be so easy in today's world, and that's where compassionate leadership comes in the front.
So would that tie in with a personality type of a leader? For example, I write about self-esteem and I've done a lot of research related to that. How would a leader's self-esteem, because there are many leaders who are on the spectrum of being almost narcissistic. How would you guide them or define them or lead them into that zone of being in the healthy self-esteem, compassionate leadership modality? How would you guide somebody like that?
Well, incidentally, a couple of my coaching assignments in the last few months that have been with some senior leader executives have been in the same form. I mean, we say that a person who does well is generally a person who is a very interesting coachable candidate, because there's a constant need to be better. Now the challenge is the one who's achieved success in a certain pedigree of work that he's done. He believes that that's the only way that success can come in. And he tries to force-fit that formula in as many interventions and as many situations as he can. Now, when you operate with such a mindset, you generally tend to hit a hurdle sometime or the other sooner than later.
Correct.
So leaders who come in with an extremely high self-esteem, it might do well to slightly moderate and understand what the company culture and the team culture is all about. So, lower your guard a little, be a little more vulnerable, open up and have a lot of conversations with people of different layers. And I am one who have adopted, advocated and coached people on multiple skip level connects. It generally helps you to increase your self-esteem. And you start redefining your self-esteem in a manner which is really concocted for that situation that you're in. So it is an interesting piece where leaders with very high self-esteem, one, they know how to do the job. So you don't need to teach them how to do the job. You probably need to teach them how they can be a little more malleable, how they can be a little more
with their team, or how to connect, like be compassionate to their team's issues, different ways like that.
Yes, completely. And that's where the compassionate piece, dwells into this, self-esteem piece that you speak about.
So what about young executives? They're focusing on climbing the career path. they're highly ambitious. What abilities do they need to develop? What would you give advice to very ambitious young executives?
That's a nice tough one actually, because if you look at the aggression of the youth today, I guess as people who spent in a little more time and so-called gained a little more wisdom.
Mm,
One, it's important to respect that aggression of the youth. You
it
got to
is.
really respect. You've
Yes.
got to respect.
Mm,
And if you acknowledge that aggression, you then start building a trust with them. The
mhm,
point is when you go head on and try to prove that your wisdom and your experience matters more than his exuberance, you might actually land up into more of headwinds than tailwind. You want to be a tailwind to him to really get and jumpstart his career in a manner that's very sustainable. So
mhm,
startup leaders today or young leaders today that we see, really bright sparks, uh,
mm,
you could do a lot of mentoring with them.
okay.
They are ideal candidates for mentoring. I've got a couple of clients whom I mentor who are just 15 years into their career, but very clear goals in the next 5 and 10 years. And
Mhm,
these are people who have a goal in mind, and they need the right kind of mentorship. So people who are high flying startups, high flying start leaders, you might do well with the right kind of moderations and mentoring. Tell
mhm,
them what it means to really sustain in the long run,
mhm,
rather than peak high and burn out
mhm.
a lot more quicker than they would want to. So there's a lot of work around mindfulness. There's a
Yes.
lot of work around self awareness, and that's where your self esteem comes in very very nicely as a concept that you can really start channelizing their energies accordingly.
Yeah, so young people need that direction from their seniors, from their managers. So to a certain extent, business leaders, corporate seniors need to have that mentorship, coaching mentality also. That kind of person, approachable, like you said, personality in this day and age. So can you just give me a final thing on
One I guess is keep upping your quotient of being self-aware. I guess
mhm,
the more and more you are self-aware, the more and more you practice mindfulness, you then start to garner a lot of strength around your entire kitty. Number one. Number two is be a lot more disciplined. I mean, today what I see is people lack the tenacity to be disciplined and stay on course for a long period of time.
mhm,
If you are disciplined enough, which means you got to be extremely focused on what's the kind of ecosystem that you're operating around, what's the kind of requirement that you have at work, what's the kind of requirement that you have off work,
mhm.
and try and have a schedule around this. And the more
Okay,
you
yes.
schedule and the more and more disciplined you are, you will achieve a lot more, and that's where productivity increases
Mhm,
dramatically.
mhm,
And the third that I see, which has really stood out in the last 2 to 3 years, which has really taken me by storm as well, is in
mhm.
the power of networking.
Oh,
Uh, networks create opportunities that one cannot see today. The
okay.
fact that when I first wrote to you and complimented on your work, one wouldn't have imagined after a few months then we would be sitting on a talk show like this and having
Yeah.
our ideas and perspectives shared. But
Mm,
that's the power of networks. The
correct.
power of networks is on how you leverage it and how you can learn from those networks. And I
Mhm,
guess these three things in today's world
mhm.
uh, will probably take you for the next decade very comfortably. I mean, one should not be really looking at very far because it's been so uncertain
Yes.
and so ambiguous that we really do not know. So I believe for the next 10 years, for the next decade, if you really want to do well, I guess these three steps will certainly pave the path and keep you on course.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prashant. Just one more final question. Is there
Yes.
any particular quote or, affirmation or anything that you follow every day? Is there anything like that?
I guess there's nothing that I really follow to an extent, but I keep getting I keep liking and reading real life stories. I really follow successful people and learn from their experiences. They could be small, they could be big, and it actually comes to the line that you are working on, which is on reboot, reflect, and revive. Each of these three denotes a very different function in one's life, and you technically need to undergo all these three buzzwords probably in a day once at least, or probably in a week at least once. And I guess if I have to give a parting shot, probably I would like to endorse and echo what you are working on currently. And the book that you've written is on I think reboot, reflect, and revive. Keep exploring your things and keep questioning the status quo. I guess
Thank you.
you'll be moving ahead.